Welcome to the inaugural event in the Artists in Conversation series. We are excited to, as a part of this series, get an inside look at the stories and inspiration behind the work of some of the many incredible artists within our community. We hope to learn, grow, and better understand what goes into artistic expression, cultural practice, and the pursuit of art as a profession. Our inaugural artist to be a part of this is Mohamed Assani, who will be in conversation with Aliyah Amarshi. Aliyah Amarshi has worked for the last decade in the arts community as a producer and senior leader at theatre organizations in Vancouver. She has sat on advisories for the Canada Council for the Arts and the BC Arts Council, and has served on the boards of various arts organizations, including the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres, a national theatre service organization. Aliyah is a passionate advocate for the importance of art in building resilient individuals and communities, and the transformative power art holds to provoke, engage, and unify. She is currently a cultural planner at the City of Vancouver. We hope you enjoy the conversation, and with that, welcome, Aliyah.
It's a pleasure to introduce Mohamed Assani, an award-winning sitar player and composer known for being a proactive ambassador for his rich musical tradition. He has brought the sitar to new audiences through innovative collaborations that have stretched the boundaries of his instrument. Mohamed has performed Hindustani classical music, as well as his own original music across the globe, with orchestras, string quartets, hip-hop artists, DJs, world music ensembles, jazz artists, Indian and Pakistani classical artists, and as a soloist. He has been described by the Georgia Straight, which is a Vancouver-based arts and entertainment publication, as both a musician who's deeply rooted in the artistic traditions of South Asia and as a one-of-a-kind innovator. Mohamed recently released a new album titled Wayfinder, which has been described as a unique and surprising record that will take you places you've never been before. The music is nothing short of bewitching. It surprises, delights, and leaves the listener lifted, overwhelmed, yet surprisingly calm. This album is like finding a gem in a box you thought you had already sorted out many times before. Just listen and be transported. So let's do that. Let's take a listen to a track from that album titled Lullaby for Guli. Hi, Mohammed. It's lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Hey, Aliyah, I'm doing good. Really good to see you. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to spend this time with you and despite the distance to connect in this way. And wanted to wish you congratulations on the recent release of Wayfinder.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm really, really looking forward to talking to you today.
So
Thank
we
you.
just heard the track Lullaby for Guli, absolutely beautiful. And as we move through the different phases of this piece, we find that it has sort of sweeping string-based symphonic elements, and then a more contemporary beat-based rhythmic groove, and then what feels like kind of like a rock vibe, where the sitar is almost taking on a contemporary feel and the personality of an electric guitar. And then it circles back to where we know and how we know the sitar to sound. So when reflecting on this piece and listening to it, this journey seemed like it reflects, a number of elements. It reflects the sheer versatility of the instrument itself, and then also the sort of the multi-dimensional approach that it seems that you take in your creative process. I'm wondering if we can unpack that a little bit. Can you talk to us a little bit about your inspiration for this particular piece?
Yes, absolutely. This piece, I wrote it in honor for my mother. So my mother is called Gulchakar. Everybody knew her as Guli. So, and she used to tell me a lot of stories and a lot of funny stories as well. Like her stories would be very funny. And I remember being very young at that age. And then I realized that, like, a lot of the stories and concepts uh, c- comes from a mother to a child in the forms of lullabies or stories. And there's a lot of beautiful information. Just to give an example, there's a poet called Javed Akhtar from India. He writes for Bollywood, and there is a poem where he says that सच कहती थी जो अम्मी कहती थी मेरे बचपन के दिनों में चांद पे परियां रहती थी. And I'll translate. It says that
Thank you.
it is true whatever my mom used to say to me in my childhood days. Fairies used to dwell on the moon, right? The fairies dwell. So, as a child, you would remember, and that was a reality. As a child, you did think that the fairies are living there, and it brought comfort or whatever imagination to a child's world to see and to dream and to further. So the lullabies have a very special place for me in my life, and I thought that how can I honor my mother? So I wrote this for my mother in her memory.
That's beautiful, Mohammed. Thank you. Um, can we go back to the beginning? You speak of your mother, you speak of your family, of childhood. Let's go back to that beginning. Where and how did your musical journey begin?
So it's like if I go back to my earliest memories were when I was 4 years old, and there was actually a war going on in India and between India and Pakistan, and I remember I wasn't frightened. That's a gift of being a child is that you're not frightened, right? That's a really and I remember that we lived opposite Karimabad Jamaat Khana in Karachi, and all I remember is that like there used to be blackouts and people used to gather under the building. There was like a basement type of place, and the one thing that people would really listen to was radio because radio would be telling you the information. So and then on radio there would be just news and songs, and those songs are still in my memory. I still remember those songs, and I still sometimes play them on the sitar because those songs actually don't they only bring me some very positive vibes actually, because that's what was calming for me in those days. And so that's the earliest thing that I could remember. And Yeah, so that was my early childhood memory. One other memory that I really distinctly remember is that there used to be a lot of community feel. For example, every time there was like Khushali, we used to have a lot of dandiyaras, and it would be like on a big scale. So like where I lived, Karimabad, there was a big population of people. So they would have it in a field, a hockey or a football kind of like ground in the middle. There was always like a smiley band playing. And as I remember, as an 8, 9 year old child, I used to be just there would be a lot of games going around, like a mela, like a fair. But in the middle, there would be an orchestra, and I would be like, after playing a few games, I'd be just glued to the stage, and I'd be looking at somebody playing guitar or singing or playing the drums, and I used to just dream, oh, this sounds too good to me. So as a child, as you know, I was so attracted listening to these smiley bands, and obviously I wanted to do that myself. And luckily, as I joined Garden Orchestra, and I think at the age of 12 or 13, I started learning the guitar. And one day, my teacher, Suleiman, called me and he said, "Can I talk to your sister, my elder sister, Fatima?" And he said to her, "Can you send Mohammed to Holiday Inn? Because we need him to play." And then he asks me, "Do you have blue tie? Do you have this kind of trouser? Do you have shirt?" And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like, what's happening? Like, am I really like, so without any rehearsal or anything, like I landed. I was so excited. Like that was my entry into the orchestra. And I remember I'm standing and I used to play bass guitar then. And Suleiman Bhai would say, he will shout out the names of the chords because I had not, he would say, F, then he will say C, then he will just say all the names of the notes that I should be playing. So that was, and from that was the start of me being in the Smiley Orchestra. And then we had some great adventures there, really good, some best memories of my life. So I was attracted to the guitar, and that's what I started learning. And then I was needed to play the bass, so I started play the bass. And then I started playing the keyboard, and then I became really interested in playing the keyboard. And then I kind of understood that, oh, keyboard is something where you can compose and it kind of like gels everything. So then I developed interest in learning the piano, and for which I traveled to England to study piano when I was 19.
Wow. So how many different instruments do you play and have you received training in?
So I've learned the piano, I've learned the guitar, I've learned bass guitar, and I've learned tabla, and I've learned sitar, and I've learned composing.
Wow.
So those are a few instruments.
So then in terms of the actual training, because you mentioned the piano and the guitar, and those are traditionally known as, being from the Western kind of canon of instruments and seem to be very different from the sitar, which you are known for now. So can you tell us a little bit about the training that you received in the sort of the Western canon of, with the guitar and the piano, and you ultimately went to school for piano. So
Yeah,
can you unpack that a little bit for us?
absolutely. I'll say a saying before that. We have a saying in Pakistan which says, "Ghar ki murgi dal barabar." So like a chicken cooked at home equals lentils from outside. Because outside always looks greener, better, and more attractive, right? So even if you had biryani cooked at home, something like a not like a biryani would still seem, oh wow, I want that. So this is like human, and I was very attracted to, like what was out there, and what happens was that like I had a friend who came back from England, and he knew that I was into music, so he said to me, "Oh, you should go to England. Like in England, like people play in these big halls. They wear tuxedos, they wear bow tie, and I said, what really? And you get paid for this as well? Like it was like, wow, what world is this? So that was got me really curious. And one of my friend played me a symphony by Beethoven, which blew my mind with Symphony 5. And I thought, what is this music? This is incredible. So like, like those things like really attracted me. And then I thought, okay, I need to know more about this. So that began my curiosity and journey into traveling to England, and studying music. And I landed upon a degree course of having only exposed to Western music for 7, 8 months. I played very little piano at the time. I only knew about a couple of composers like Beethoven or Mozart. So that was like a very steep and exciting journey that I went through. And I was lucky to go to a college where Pandit Ravi Shankar had briefly taught. a very amazing personality called Rabindranath Tagore, who was a famous playwright, poet and painter, actually lived there for a long time. His room is still in that college. So see, like world is like funny because like I'm leaving South Asia, and when I arrive in Dartington, there is like Western music and everything, but there was also a famous tabla player from India, Pandit Sharda Sahai. There were people from Indonesia teaching the gamelan. There were people teaching African music from like West African music, and so I thought, wow, this is like incredible. Like I was only expecting to learn about Western classical music, but then like the palette was very wide, and that was like okay, it was very overwhelming in a very exciting way. Like yeah.
And so touching on your family now, in terms of just were they a source of constant support through your journey and in finding music and in developing a passion for it and ultimately deciding to study it?
Yeah, everybody was very supportive except my dad. My dad did not speak to me for about 7, 8 years. And again, like, and that's why when he would say, he would say it in Gujarati, who etla bada paisa beju tu tabla bagan wala." I'm sending him so much money to play tabla, and he was, say these things. But in the end, he came around it, but took a long time. Like, say, I'm talking about 20 years or so, then he accepted me. Like
Wow.
that, yeah, yeah. Which is, I can understand, but it is really encouraging to see that now parents are different. They can see that there there is a lot more role models, people doing it in our community. Still, we need more role model and more kind of like basis for people to see these role models on a regular basis. So everybody else was really supportive. My dad was, and one thing very that is problematic is that this is a profession where you do need a lot of support, because like the type of people that I am playing, who are like playing as well, like I am. Some of them have like 9 or 10 generations of a structure that's been solidly laid, training, like nurturing, opportunities, platforms, so a lot of people get it like ready made, like this is, they find they have the teachers in the family, there's no objection and there's full support. But I found that like if I'm doing it, I had to find a teacher, I had to do everything from scratch. I'm not saying that it's like, but it has its own kind of interesting journey, like you do it from scratch. So I did it from scratch, but I think in this kind of um, profession, it's good that we have some solid mentors, and that's what I would encourage in our Jamaat as well. That we have solid mentors and role models, so we're not looking around that what to do next and so on. That so yeah.
So Mohammed, what advice then would you have for aspiring musicians?
Uh, Follow your passion, uh, but be aware that. It's not like a destination where you want to go to, like it's not that okay, I want to get there as fast as possible. Keep your passion alive, but know that like as people say, that like genius or talent or passion is 1%. Sorry, I'll repeat that. Let's start again. Okay. Okay, so what I would say to aspiring musicians is that follow your passion, but it's not about like a quick fix. Like when I started learning, like I used to think that it's going to be over in my learning is going to be over in 2 3 years time, and then I'll be where I want to be. It takes time, but that's fine. If you are passionate, you will continue on the journey, and also like. There is discipline. So have fun with what you do. But if you want to get there quickly, then just like, think about the structures. Like if your teacher is saying, like practice just the scales for 5 hours a week, then that's what you do. and then do play other things or so on. So everything has music is something that like we think that it's all like kind of like spiritual or mystical and it just happens, and like it's not, it's very like it's like anything like sports, like if you're going to spend so many hours in the gym, you will be a good sports person, right? And other techniques will obviously come with specific sports. Music is like that as well. It's a journey that is very disciplined. If you do your hard work, practicing your scales and do all those things, and then you will get there. Listen to a wide variety of people. So if you're in hip hop, I'd like you to actually listen to something else. Like, okay, like I'm going to listen to something from Mongolian string player, or I'll go to West Africa, or I'll go to Russian music or ballet, or it could be anything. Widen your horizon. Even if you're a dancer, listen to music, or vice versa. If you're a musician, listen to a dancer. Inspiration can come from so many different places. It could be painting. So as long as and also you will find there's a thread between all the arts. We talk about pluralism and how music is a universal language and all that. It is, but we have to expose ourselves enough times to different stimulus and different styles of music, and then the more we do, one day you will start beginning to realize that, okay, it's all kind of connected, and I can see a common thread. Oh, there's a structure. A piece starts and there's a climax and the piece quietens down. That happens to most styles of music. It's not unique to one particular style of music. So I encourage, broaden your listening, variety, and then also like practice your art. So that would be my and talk to your parents about it as well. Like if you're really passionate about it, don't hide it. Sometimes people are like scared to ask their parents that, oh, my parents want me to be an accountant, so like this is what I will do. Talk to them and be balanced. Like we need education. So like I'm a musician, and that's what I do. I compose, but I have 2 degrees in music. I have a degree, postgrad in education. So that really helps you actually in your life, even if you are just creating music. That all that information is very useful. So keep it balanced, and then talk to other musicians like who you are inspired by in our community.
I'm curious about how you practice this idea of broadening your sort of knowledge base and your understanding of different disciplines. Um, who are you listening to these days? What's intriguing you artistically?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I do listen to quite a wide variety of music, from jazz to classical to pop. For a while, I did not listen to any pop music for a number of years, but then I had to challenge myself that, like, are you being a bit kind of like, what's the word? Snobbish? Because there is this thing amongst classical players that, oh, pop music is easy, and oh, they only play 3 chords, and look, in jazz we're doing all these 7, 13 chords, or in classical, we work with different time cycles and all. It is complex, but that's just like a very material way of thinking. Like the music is about spirit, and if you can put spirit in 2 chords or 3 notes, you don't need 7, 8, or all this, you don't need that. And that is something that it makes me humble to know that I came around that feeling. And now I feel I can almost, if anything that has spirit, I don't, I can hear anything without, it doesn't need to be specifically this or that. If it's good music, I hope that I'm open enough to embrace it. As we are talking about like how different genres are related, and like there's a story, and then there's a source where things come from, and sometimes it's an extension or evolution of that. um, I'm going to play you something, and just to demonstrate that how the language of music is so closely related. And so, for example, I'm going to use a scale called Bhairavi from the point of view of South Asian music. And Bhairavi is this. So it's a classical thing. From that classical source, I can connect it to this is Mozart Symphony 40. From there, I can connect it to Bollywood. And then same thing, I can connect it to a beautiful song from Afghanistan called Mullah Muhammad Jan. A lot of Ismailis know this as Hasbi Rabbi, but the original tune is called Mullah Muhammad Jan. So that is, I played like Rag Bharvi in the classical style. Then I played a bit of Mozart. Then I played a Bollywood song, and now Hasbi Rabbi. Like four different style, four different regions, four different parts of the world, using the same scale called Bharvi. In the West, this scale is called Phrygian, which is also used in a lot of Spanish music. So that was just an example for you.
That's incredible. You've taken this literally around the globe in 30 seconds with one instrument. So you've had the opportunity to create with other Ismaili musicians from around the world, and they're from the farthest reaches of the globe.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and working?
Yeah, one of the like extremely humbling, profound experience was when I was fortunately invited to play for Hazar Imam's 80th birthday. And there were, I believe, 19 musicians there. And most of them had different musical language, different training. Actually, not only musical, but even language that we spoke were different. You know, like some people were from Syria, some were from Afghanistan, Central Asia, you know, Tajikistan, and obviously the Western world and you know, India as well, Pakistan. So that was just like it's like you have an ideal, you think of that, and suddenly it's there to work with so many different musicians and different styles. And when it's there and then time is short, it is like, okay, you have to get to work in a really kind of like, you know, it's like yeah, in a condensed period of time, you experience this, and everybody's very emotional as well. So that was like a very, very profound experience that I'm lucky that even if I can have that once in my life, to have had that experience, and it was definitely a very beautiful experience and connection with different musicians, and also to see how we can make something work and present it to Hazar Imam. So that was a wonderful experience.
And finding that common language that music gifts all of us, but that we sometimes have to work to kind of discover. And
Yeah. So basically, like I remember there were about more than 20 ideas, 20 potential pieces were going to be part of that 20-minute piece, which we stretched it to 24 plus minutes or so. And in the end, I think we use only 3 or 4 ideas. But over the 10 days, we went to about 30 different ideas. 27 is the number that comes to my mind. And that's the whole process. And like, there were a lot of people feeling that, oh, my idea didn't go, or somebody's idea was worked well. Uh, and in the end, it's just like it was like a day or 2 days before the actual performance, we were still like as though lost in a jungle, basically. Lost in a forest. What's going to happen? Where is it going to go? This, like, and there were like huge discussions. Sometime, uh, I remember I would be talking to Sanjan Mohamed like for 3 or 4 hours after every like rehearsal, late hours of night discussing, certain things. We could do this, we could do that, and there was a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, a lot of adrenaline going, people excited. Sometimes people were crying. I remember one of the things was that like because some people had never seen the Imam, and there were like tears were of joy and or of humility, whatever you call them. Those emotions were with us all the time while we are doing this thing. And that's one miracle as well. I think like sometime like we can do whatever we can do as human beings. We can strategize, we can have structures, we can have this and that, but sometimes there's a hidden energy, there's a hidden guidance, there's a hidden outcome over which we don't have control of. Yeah. And I think we as a human beings have to let go of a lot of ego, desire, and like fears and all those things. And somehow I witnessed that whatever we did, I think it worked to the best it could have worked.
So this notion of surrender and the artist as risk taker, these seem to be sort of some themes that have come up that really influence who you are, both as an individual and how you move through the world, and as an artist and how you undertake your own practice. So can you tell us a little bit about how your experiences in different countries and your training, your varied training in different musical traditions has influenced the work that you create?
So basically, so I would say that music is like water. So like there are so many different streams coming, and then it becomes river, and then it becomes ocean. But you cannot name, oh, this like for sure, oh, this is that stream, this is that stream. I cannot say that, but I can say that what like a huge array of like styles have influenced me. A lot of musicians that I've met in my life, I've had several teachers. Also, like my own listening, like I've listened to extremely wide variety of music, from contemporary Western classical to like a tribe in Central Asia, like a tribal ceremony, which is also music. So, arguably, they may not think that that is music, that's just a ceremony. But just to give you an idea that there are many influences, but my main influences are the instruments that I've learned and play. And like I've studied Western classical music, I've studied South Asian classical music, which is called Hindustani music, which is also called Indian music. But I want to stress that it is also Pakistani music, but also the world does not understand that, because like often if somebody plays sitar, it's both, because that tradition is shared between both countries, like language and many other things, right? So so those are my influences. A lot of Ismaili music is my influence as well, like Geets, and because those were some early childhood music that I was exposed to. So and that jazz, Bollywood as well, and also Lollywood, which is the equivalent of Pakistani Bollywood, is called Lollywood from Lahore. So and there are some great music there as well, like incredible music, Qawwali music, devotional music. And then going back, I've done a lot of research into music. So like, for example, Amir Khusro was a legendary figure in South Asia. His parents were like migrants, and I'm talking about 13th century in India, and he was a disciple of at a shrine, Nizamuddin, Aliyah, and then he became one of the a very eclectic personality who invented the sitar. Arguably, people say that he brought tabla as well. So you can just think how diverse this music is that we play, right? And if you study, you will know that like what this is the plectrum that I use to play my sitar. Okay, I wear it this. This is called mizrab.
Okay.
So all these words, where do they come from? Ghazal, mizrab, sitar. Sitar is a Persian word, which means three strings. So when it first, was introduced in India, then it evolved, and Amir Khusro evolved, played a big part in its evolution. Now it has like more strings, like up to 18 strings or so or more. So it's a story, and every instrument actually tells you a story, and so I get my inspiration from that as well.
Tell us a little bit more about the sitar and how it evolved from 3 strings to 12 strings, and then also how it has influenced the development of other instruments.
Okay, so this is a sitar, and now sitar is very interesting instrument. Now it's got a lot more strings, so it has two bridges. This is the big bridge, it's called Javari, and this is a smaller one. So you can see here, this is the smaller one. Now this has a lot of strings which are under this bridge. So there are two levels of strings. This is the top string running, and then we have the strings here, which I don't know if you can see.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. Now I'm just gonna play the string underneath with this finger, and these are the top string. Yeah, and then it has some accompanying strings which are here. So if you look at all the keys, you can count how many strings there are on the sitar. So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 strings under this bridge. And on the top, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strings. And then I play this mizrab, wear this mizrab, and then so the difference between sitar and guitar, and again, why does guitar has guitar? Tar means tar is string. They are related instruments. Each instrument tells a story, and after the first crusade, a lot of Eastern instrument ended up in Europe, included instruments like zurna, which are like the oboe which is still played in Turkey, and some bowed instruments did not exist in Western music until after the Crusades, and they were brought back. So this is in sitar. It's like the guitar. It can be played like a guitar, but I can play by bending the notes, and that's what gives sitar a unique kind of sound. For example, I'll show you. Try to give you a close up. So I'm playing this note, and if I bend my fingers, the note is going to go higher. So I have these frets here, and as you can see them, unlike guitar, they are curved. Can you see them? They're like curved. And this is what enables me to bend the note. So doing this like I can do by bending. Same note. So each instrument, as I said, tells a story.
And it tells a global story where, there's so
Absolutely.
much interconnection, influence and confluence, and, your metaphor of the different rivers coming together, and, they all lead in different, unexpected, and beautiful directions. And that really came through, I think, in your most recent album of Wayfinder, where these influences are palpable. I'm wondering if you can maybe dive into that a little bit and give us some examples.
So in Wayfinder, you will hear a lot of different influences, and um, and I must say that like I'm not always very deliberate about them. Sometimes these things are happening naturally. I'm playing a melody, and then I can hear some violins or chords or some Western harmony, so that it something in me tells me go there. And sometimes it's like for me is also like I feel content that okay, I can use those things, like if I have seven ingredients and if I can combine five or six of them or even four really well, that is satisfactory. That okay, I can use a bit of Western harmony, I can use some intricate tabla rhythm, and I can use a certain folk melody. Then, and if it works, then that's some kind of evolution for me as an artist to present.
And I wanted to also ask you about your piece Khosrow's Footsteps, also on Wayfinder. And we had talked earlier about the evolution and the invention of the sitar, and the evolution of it. But this particular piece, which is a tribute to Amir Khosrow, who invented the sitar, it's an example of this smorgasbord, of these various influences, and so perhaps you can break this piece down for us a little bit, and tell us a little bit about it.
So Amir Khosrow was like a pioneering figure who invented a lot of new genre, including the powerful genre of Sufi music called the Qawwali. Was invented by Amir Khosrow. He was a poet, philosopher, and also a very eclectic personality. And one of the very profound thing he did was he introduced the concept of tarana in in music, in South Asian music. And I composed a tarana as well for Khosrow's Footstep. So it starts with one of the melody that he composed, which is called Chap Tilak. Chap Tilak is a beautiful concept because it's a story of a beloved meeting, a person meeting their lover, And so what they do, they put their best makeup, you know, bindi and all these things, and clothes. But when they meet the beloved does not look at the makeup or the bindi or the tilak, or anything like that. Just looks into the eye of the beloved, right? So at that moment, the lover realizes that like the real beauty is not outwardly. It's not how I put the bindi or how my makeup or jewelry looks. Um, and that's why you've snatched away all these like ornaments from me by looking into my eyes. Like all those things have become meaningless. Chap tilak sab chheen li. You've taken everything away from me by mujhse naina milai ke. Naina is like eyes, milai ke. Huh? So you've connected me such a deeper level, and the song represents the beauty that each human being has, which is within us. Once we take the masks off and things like that.
Let's go back to your album Wayfinder and how it's sort of it's a living example of this intersection of genre. And one particular tune or track that stands out is Serendipity. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about its various influences and the themes that come through? And hopefully we can listen to a little bit of that piece, if not the whole piece.
Sure, absolutely, with pleasure. So this piece, Serendipity, um, basically I started with just one melody, and it's actually uh, comes from a very intense rag from the sitar repertoire called Madhubanti. And so I play this this rag quite a bit, and so I composed a tune in this rag. And when I composed the tune, I thought, oh, like I can imagine some drums with it. And when I had drum, I thought, oh, now it needs a bass. Simple recipe. So then I composed a bass guitar, and then I thought that it had some Middle Eastern flavors coming out to me. So, and what's really interesting is that when you have one idea, and then you think of, okay, this is the next one I'm going. So when you put two ideas, then the option becomes even more greater, because then it will inform you something beyond what you initially thought. And that's what happened. And like the more things I put, I seen there's still room, or it's still not complete, the picture. And just the picture emerged. So this thing starts with the darbuka, Middle Eastern drums, and then it has orchestral, string section in it, and then the sitar plays this rag Madhubanti. And then I have a very jazzy and funky bass line that I composed for it. But when you put them together, it's not Madhubanti, it's not the same rag. It sounds very different. And that's what's so interesting, is that like when you move one aspect, or it's like, when you're painting a house, and if you have a painting, what's the background is, or where it is, which part, or what's next to it. It changes its aesthetic dramatically, and music is the same. So you can have I can play the same tune with tabla, it would sound very different. But if I add some harmony or bass line or drums or darbuka, it brings out nuances which are different. And I think that's what I find really interesting about that. Like, here is a practice that I do, but what happens with this kind of flavor when I'm adding something else, the vantage point changes, and we start seeing it from a different vantage point. And I experimented a few things, and luckily a lot of people like this piece a lot, and I hope you enjoy it too. Serendipity.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mohamed. I'm looking forward to continuing to enjoy Wayfinder. Every time I listen to it, something new comes up for me, a new discovery, a new mini revelation, and it's been incredibly wonderful, and I just feel so grateful to have been able to spend this this time with you and learn so much more about what makes you you, what informs your creative process, and I look forward to continuing to support your work and wish you all the very best as we go forward. And thank you. Thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much, Aliyah. It's always such a genuine pleasure to work with you. We've worked before with the Jubilee talent show. We worked together side by side, and many other times. It's always like uh, I really appreciate all your support and your understanding of the arts, and I really thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you.